Once you get to a certain level, you'll see the water coming into the canals. And then when I get done, I gotta log it on the computer. What I do is I write the time I was here, when I inspected it, what I did, the water level, and the height. This was like 20.4 this morning, and it's almost up to 21. Plus, the water that I'm bringing down,
Good morning. Monday morning. It's 10 o'clock and we're in Commission Chambers, and I do call this Commission special meeting to order. Those that are present are Commissioner Hanks, Vice Mayor Luke, myself, Mayor McDowell, Commissioner Carrison, Commissioner Emmerich. We have City Manager, City Attorney, City Clerk, and our Recording Secretary, Ms. Hale. Chief, welcome. At this time, I would like to have Mr. Lasbrigado please come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, if you don't mind.
Good morning, Commissioner. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that. We have way too many staff and we had COVID, so I'm never going to get through my list of having everybody in the departments try and lead us in the pledge. But at this time, I need an approval of the agenda, please.
So moved.
Motion on the floor to approve the agenda, and that was made by Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Emmerich. Anything to that?
No, ma'am.
Seeing none, we'll go ahead and take the vote. And that approval of the agenda passed 5-0. At this time, Vice Mayor, do we have any public comment?
The comments that you have are for item 3.
Thank you very much. Do we have any general public comment virtually?
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
I'm Deborah Mays. I live at 2539 Valkyria Avenue, which is very close to the proposed 7-Eleven on Cranberry and Price. I do not want the special exemptions removed to allow this unnecessary gas station. It has already been voiced by many that there are plenty of gas stations nearby. These exceptions were put in place by our city government to protect the residents of this neighborhood. What has changed? Why do we no longer need protected? Could it possibly the lure of big corporate money? Vote for the people and not big money. Support the people who put you in office. Roberta Brownwell. I am sure you will get a lot of anonymous public comments today. The ABCD group is telling everyone to comment anonymously for today's meeting. This is what they do to try and take over our city commission. They control 2 commissioners now, and if they get their way in the upcoming election, they will control 2 more. They also are trying to control the city charter. Please see this group for what they really are. Their social media campaign shows nothing but hate and negativity. Their abuse of our city clerk's office for record requests is unconscionable. I see where they filed 15 ethics complaints against Commissioner Hanks, and all were unfounded. Now they are bent on suing the city. Please don't let this group sway you with their anonymous comments. Unlike them, I attached my name to this comment. This one is anonymous. Thank you, commissioners, for your time. I'd just like to say thanks for not letting that Gibson lady be a part of the charter board. I saw a post on Facebook where her partner in ABCD, Bruni, referred to Commissioner Vanessa as a drug addict because she wore pink in her hair to honor breast cancer victims. This is not the kind of person we want on any board. They are disgusting with their hate and negativity. What is even more disgusting is that our mayor and vice mayor voted to let this hateful person be on a board for our city and openly support ABCD. Stop the hate and let's build up our city and not tear it down. That's all for this one.
Thank you. All right, so now we will move on to the reorg. Just in case, before I turn it over to city manager, I just want to, in case somebody saw the agenda that was posted on Thursday or Friday about having the FLUDRA discussion about the mediation, that was removed from the agenda and the agenda was amended. So we are not going to be having any mediation discussion on the 7-Eleven. So I just wanted to put that on the record, just in case somebody saw an older version of the agenda. So at this time, city manager. Oh, sorry, hold on.
Mayor, after the presentation, can we call the public comment and then we can get into questions and communications so that we can have that done first prior to our deliberation? I'd like to get a consensus.
Consensus to have public comment and then question and answer?
Correct.
Thank you.
I don't have a problem with it.
Commissioner Hanks,
Yeah, I'm fine.
Commissioner Emmerich,
Yeah, that's fine.
doesn't matter.
You have 3 here.
But she said after the presentation.
Yeah, after
and
the
then do it.
presentation.
Okay.
Correct. Thank you.
Go ahead, city manager, I'm sorry.
I'm going to step down here so I can do the presentation.
Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. So
Good morning.
this process all started back in June at the budget workshops, where I presented you all.
I need to have you state your name for the record, just.
For now, I'm Pete Lear. I may change that name as the meeting goes on, just for the fun of it. But no, so back in June, I presented you all with an idea I had during the budget workshops. It's not a new idea. It's something that's been around for quite a while, which was to split up neighborhood development services back into two departments that it became back in, I believe it was 2001 or 2002 timeframe. At that point in time, it was planning, zoning, and engineering was one department, and building was another department. So I'm proposing that we reorganize neighborhood development services. It'd be the creation of the Department of Building and Code Enforcement Services, and the other one would be the Department of Development and Environmental Affairs. As I mentioned back in June, this was presented to you all. There was a unanimous decision to move forward with this process and have the city attorney work on an ordinance. In the backup, you'll see there's a couple of org charts. One would be the one for the Building and Code Enforcement Services Department. They would have a director that would oversee the building official, the Administrative Services Division, and the Code Enforcement Division. Currently, the Neighborhood Development Services also oversees planning as well as economic development and social services, is what was in place prior to very recently. The Department of Environmental Affairs would have a director position, and they would oversee the planning division, social services, and economic development. You can see all the people underneath that would be there. Backing up a little bit, like I said, this was originally proposed to you all in June. Then in July, the July 21st meeting, this was put on hold. The department director for this was left in the budget but unfunded through the budget process. At that meeting, there was lengthy conversation. I listened to it again this weekend just so that I could get a little more fresh with what happened, because as you know, I was not here during that meeting. Commission directed at that point in time to bring this back. It was actually said, bring back when it's convenient for staff. And then Mayor, you put a 3-month time frame on it for it to be done within 3 months. That gives us 2 days from today to be within that 3 months. I state that mainly because there's a lot of comment being made out in the public that this was being forced back in front of the commission. No, the commission directed this to come back. So I want to be very clear that this was not me forcing this on you all. This was me following your direction. So while there are some people that are out there making comments that that's not what happened, it is. I went and listened. They might want to do that too.
Comments, lies, whatever you want to put them in.
I have the minutes here. I'll read them into the record if you'd like. I have it right here.
Sure, that'd be great.
There was a consensus to direct the acting city manager and staff to schedule a greater discussion on department reorganization at the time within the next 3 months that is most appropriate under staff scheduling constraints and with a variety of options. And those are the minutes verbatim that were captured for the City Commission workshop on July 21st.
Thank you, Mayor. And as I said, that was July 21st. Today is October 19th, which is 2 days short of 3 months. So we are within the 3 months, barely. So again, Department of Development and Environmental Affairs would have the planning manager who would oversee 2 arborists, GIS analysts, the environmental technician, planner 3s, and the zoning coordinators. And those people would oversee the people that are below there. You also have a social services manager, which would oversee the administrative service specialist and the housing life skills specialist. And the economic development division manager will oversee the marketing and business development specialist, staff assistant 2, and market research analyst. Options for the future with the Department of Development and Environmental Affairs would add a natural resources manager. This is something the commission has put in their strategic plan, has also been working, given staff the direction to try to get to that point at some point in the future. At that point, the arborist would be under the natural resources manager, as well as the environmental technician and the archaeologist. They would come out from underneath the planning manager. Again, this is future, not necessarily next year or the year after, but it is sometime in the future. Obviously, hiring new positions and new managers has budgetary impacts, so it's something that the commission would have to approve anyway. The existing structure that we have right now has city manager overseeing social services and economic development, and assistant city manager overseeing the planning manager. Part of this was done because the current plan that we had where Neighborhood Development Services was overseeing all three of these divisions. It was just too much for one person. As we've had the commission, not this commission, but the city commission had a study done way back in 2001 that showed that Neighborhood Development Services, which was actually under a different name at the time, needed to be split. It was their chief recommendation of that study, and the commission adopted an ordinance splitting the two. They were put back together in around the 2011 timeframe administratively. An ordinance was never brought forward to eliminate the planning department. Actually, it was discovered somewhere around 2014 that needed to be done when we created the Human Resources Department. So that was an oversight back then, so that the department was never deactivated. I say that because I know that you also had discussions back in July of the charter provision that in order to activate or deactivate a department requires a unanimous vote of the commission. Don't know that it's always been unanimous, but that is what our current charter states, and that's really, at this point, all that matters. And so the city attorney and I had conversations about whether or not an ordinance would need that unanimous provision since it was never deactivated in the first place. After conversations between the city attorney and I, it's a weak argument to be made that it doesn't need. It is an argument that could be made, but it's not a great one. In order to do things the best way possible, it would be great to do an ordinance creating both of these new departments and eliminating the old one. But in the meantime, due to the span of control and the amount of work with Neighborhood Development Services, having a director that's overseeing, in essence, way too many people and too many key functions for the city's future, we've moved the planning division under Assistant City Manager Yarborough. He is overseeing them. They were under him anyway, just with a director in between. So planning reports directly to him now. And Economic Development and Social Services report directly to me. This helps reduce what you've probably heard in the past referred to as span of control. One person has too many people that they oversee. Typically, that number shouldn't be more than about 8. More than that, and you start to basically lose the control or provide the proper oversight. So that's part of the reasons for that change. So here's the citywide organizational chart under option A. You would have an assistant city manager. One of them would oversee finance, human resources, IT, and parks and rec. The other assistant city manager would see building and code enforcement, public utilities, and public works. And then the city manager would oversee communications, fire rescue, police, and development and environmental affairs. With that, I'll turn it over to you all for some questions. There's been, like I said, there's been a lot of conversation out there in the public. Not all of it accurate, but we'll see what we can do to clean up some of that today.
Sounds great. All right, so based on consensus, we will go ahead and hear from public comment first. I'm going to leave that one for last. Mr. Alan Hale. The presentation is finished, sir. We gave consensus to have public comment at this time. Thank you very much. I hope the presentation helped with your public comment.
Yes.
Thank you.
This is Alan Hale, Northport. What I've noticed, what you've recommended here is that the division, preferably I'd like to see the Division of Natural Resources be autonomous, be their own department. And you've, it looks like here in the last chart, citywide organizational chart, that you've lopped them with development. The problem with this is you have two different goals of the department. The environmental division, Department of Natural Resources, would represent the constituency that really can't speak for themselves, the wildlife. And the lopping them in with development, the goals of the development are to bring in revenue of the city. So sometimes those could come into conflict. What is that?
Go ahead.
You're fine.
Okay. What I wanted to say is that what I envisioned when the EMB discussed this was the I'll call it the DNR, the Natural Resources Department, would be autonomous and standing on their own, and that be answer only to the city manager and the commission. There would be no need for any employees. We're creating an agency that is to handle all environmental matters coming before the city, and there are going to be more of them. As we all know, there's a connection between global warming and the tree canopy. We have been kicking the can down the road about how to create, without forcing people to do it, to maintain the 35% tree canopy, which we agreed on. So that is my only, I am glad that you all are looking at this. I'm quite gobsmacked here. I thought we are losing traction on this, and it's very good that Mr. Frank Miles has agreed to take it up and come up with a plan. But again, on the last chart, I want to see a demarcation. I want to see the DNR become its own agency, separate from the Department of Development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hale. Ms. Connie Burney?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to just read into the record the definition from the Merriam-Webster dictionary, I guess you'd call it, of the word reviving, which is in your backup material, to become active. The dictionary.com, to activate. And now I'll read to you Charter 5.05A states, the City Commission shall, by ordinance, adopt by unanimous vote, activate or deactivate departments as deemed necessary for the efficient administration and operation of city government. My statement to you would be, two wrongs don't make a right. And I'm concerned about the statement, this is following your direction. I know that you receive every month a very long list of other directions given by this city commission, some that go back nearly 4 years that have never been acted on. They're completely ignored. That's a problem, and I hope it will be taken up. So the statement that I'm just following your direction this morning, sorry, find it laughable. For the record, I did not call any city commissioner a drug addict on social media. Do want to make that very clear. And the city organizational chart that was held up. Who's at the top of that city organizational chart? It's in your budget. It's in every document in the city. It's the citizens of this community. The voters, the citizens, the taxpayers. Some of you forgot that because it was stated at a meeting just recently that certain people in here are running the city by proxy. In fact, it is all of you who run the city by proxy. By the proxy and the vote of the people. We have entrusted you to properly run the city, and some of you forgot.
Would like to clarify that one citizen is not the citizens.
Mr. English?
Morning, Commissioners. Chuck English, Northport. I am really hoping that you strongly consider separating neighborhood development because it was proposed when the department was put together that this entity, way back when, Commissioner, when it was put together, that there be an environmental entity within this department. There are many reasons for it. Some I've expressed that we need to be looking for. And I believe that this department would be an asset to addressing those needs. And in particular, it relates to the quality of life of our citizens. And the foundation of that quality of life is our environment and natural resources. This department's needed, and please put it together, or you'll be seeing me till I'm dust. You have a blessed day.
Thank you, Mr. English.
You'll be chasing me around town.
City Attorney, I have one more public comment, and I need your advice on how to handle it. Its name is anonymous. Granted, today I only have one that is titled by the person that wants to speak as anonymous. What if there was more than one or two or three that are all titled anonymous? And how do we do anonymous public comment at this time when they're coming up here? This anonymous thing is very new to me, and I'll be honest, I was hoping I would have had the memo in time for today's meeting.
I understand, Mayor, as you know, we've had
A lot of things going on,
intervening,
I know.
high priority issue. And so I will provide the memo to you, but what I'm telling you is not going to differ from what is in the memo. And that is that we cannot require someone to provide their name. So they can come up and be on camera and provide public comment. And if someone recognizes them, I mean, that's fine, but we cannot require that they provide their name.
Okay, so even though I have one today, let's say I have
Oh,
a
you're
stack.
asking how do you call them and
How
have
do I
them line
call
up?
them when they're all named anonymous?
Well, hopefully they know who they are and, I mean, unless they start moving in a mass surge, then, I guess they'll work out among themselves.
Does Anonymous have a last name?
No.
Well, maybe you
I
can
do
drill
have a
down.
public comment card for a citizen called Anonymous. The agenda is for the Neighborhood Development Services. So if whoever the anonymous person is, if you could please come up and make your public comment. And I'm not seeing any movement. I'll give it a minute in case they're out in the hallway. So in the memo that you're going to be drafting based on this, could you please include this kind of scenario as to how this gets handled?
I think that would be a commission decision, honestly.
Well, I don't
Mayor.
know
It's-
because state statute is requiring us to call anonymous and accept anonymous. So that's why I'm asking you to,
Yes, ma'am, but with
Delve a little
respect,
deeper.
with respect to your meeting processes, it's not really legal in nature.
okay.
I think the memo probably needs to be an agenda item, and we discuss those types of things.
Yeah, because we could always, like, let's say if it's part of the process, when you turn in one anonymous, give them a number. Anonymous number one, number two. It's just a
Right.
way to schedule it properly, but in a bigger discussion.
Right.
All right. So at this time, I'm going to make one more call for anonymous, and then I'm going to close this portion of present public comment and then move on to online public comment. So anonymous, going once, going twice. City Clerk, could you please read public comment that we received virtually? And Commissioner
Got it,
Carrison,
yeah.
I'll get to you as soon
Yeah,
as we're
it's
done.
about the anonymous thing.
I'm sure there'll be plenty more.
Oh, I'm sure.
Go ahead, City Clerk.
Barbara Lockhart. This public comment is being made in support of enhancing the environmental component of the city operations by creating a sustainability land manager, natural resource position or division within the city. No matter which option commission may choose within this agenda item, a development department should have an environmental division in order to allow the environment to have a voice at the city table too. The city is 1/3 built out thus far. At the rate the city has developed in the past and is developing once again, a better balance has been and is needed between growth and environmental management and protection. At least one sustainability land manager, natural resource staff person is long overdue. Please keep our environment in mind when making your decisions today. It needs your voices. Thank you. Art Bilski. While I realize that any vote on this item will fall 3-2 and comments may not even be considered by most, I feel that this agenda item should be postponed until after the election and a new commissioner is sworn in. Accelerating this item is not in the best interest of the city, both fiscally and from an image standpoint. These proposals appear to reward a city manager who appears to have a personal agenda. As an alternative, I suggest that any decision have a delayed implementation to 1/1/21. That's all.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Carrison, you wanted to speak about the public comments and the
Yeah.
anonymous?
Some time ago, this was a discussion as well. And if I remember correctly, as long as we put a policy that stated you had to fill out a document, then on that document could have a name. I can't remember exactly what happened, but we had this conversation like in 2006, just so you know, that there was case law and attorney general opinions that were brought into it. So maybe that'll help you kind of look through. But there was kind of like a loophole per se. I just can't remember what the end result was.
Did you want a comment from city attorney or have her include
No,
that
I
as
just
part of
wanted her to know, I'm not going to be here in a month, so there you go.
All right, so at this time, we'll turn it over for questions from the commission. Questions, we'll save comments for after our question period. So Vice Mayor, you have your light on, please.
To speak to what city manager was talking about, public comments, I don't peruse that sort of stuff, so that has no bearing upon me what somebody else says. I look at the facts and try to run with that. My first question is the chart for Building and Code Enforcement Service Department. Does that align to what the budget is currently for 2021?
I believe it does.
Okay.
Well, without the other divisions removed, because it was in the current budget, it has neighborhood development services and it has the other 3 divisions on there as well.
Well, I know we had a change to Mr. Miles, the way his wage was changed around.
The way his wage is allocated has nothing to do with the way an org chart looks.
But it kind of sort of does, because that means what he's over. And so I'm just making sure that this chart
Yes.
was okay per the budget of 2021.
Yes, ma'am. His current salary is being allocated among the 3 divisions that are reported here. It's actually split over 2 because administrative services falls under the building fund. So most of his salary is being paid out of the building fund with a portion of it out of the general fund for code enforcement.
Okay, correct. That's what I recalled. The dotted line going to the application system administrator, IT, why is that?
Because that employee actually is in IT, but is dedicated to this department.
And they're funded out of IT?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So,
Or wait, I'm sorry, no, they're actually funded out of the building fund,
but they
but
report,
they report to IT.
okay, kind of sort of what media does in the various departments. Thank you. So this chart, we're pretty much good to go budget-wise.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, great. It is the other chart, in my opinion, that we're looking at, and we have to compare to what the budget constraints are with that. I am all about the division. I am all about the environmental department, but there are steps that we have to take, I believe, to get to the future because of those constraints on us in the budget. My first question is that 2001, 2002 study, is that the last time a study was done for the overall organization?
I believe it actually was an external study. I don't believe there's been one done since then.
Wow.
And we've done internal ones, but there has not, which would not have been done by an outside party. And we've had, I believe there's been some internal or external ones done on specific departments. I know that Public Works had one done quite a while ago after this, but before now. PD
That's
actually had
almost
one.
20 years ago.
I'm
So-
pretty certain there was an update to the MGP study.
There's been departmental
Yeah.
ones, Citizens Public, I forget what their full name is. There's a organization that did one of PD probably about 5 years ago. There's been some for, like I said, departmental ones, but not citywide ones.
Okay. Do we know, I mean, because it was very interesting, the study was. I don't believe all of the points have really been addressed in almost 20 years, have they? Do we know which ones have been achieved or where we've had to tweak?
Honest with you, I was not here in 2001. And when we started researching all of this is when we found out the study even existed. Because there's very few people that were here in 2001, certainly at a level that would have known about this or this chart.
We lose
study.
our history, don't we?
Every time
often?
people leave.
Yeah. It might behoove us to do a thorough look at what that study said and how far we've gotten and what other departments we've had, closer studies on. I will say that in 2011, when the two departments or divisions were combined to the one NDS, there was a commissioner back then who wanted to know why it wasn't being put on as an ordinance. And at that time, City Manager Jonathan Lewis said that when the budget is approved, when you change all those within the budget, that would suffice because it was a 5-0 vote for the budget. Now, personally, I agree with the city attorney's deduction of that and what you have stated. We need to clearly follow, the charter. And
He and I
this,
have had a conversation about that. He still stands by that statement, and
I know,
we still disagree on that.
yeah, but for the cleanness, the clarity of doing it the highest and most proper way, I think it should be done as you've stated as an ordinance. I'm wondering, because we do have constraints, I'm wondering if we can't come up with a hybrid of the two. You're definitely at some point in time going to need some type of additional director, but we don't have the money for it at this point in time. And personally, myself, I had a brief conversation with you also. I would kind of like to see planning standing on their own and swing the environmental, the arborist, and those who work with the environmental over to public works. I think that helps by keeping planning clean to themselves. And until a later year when we can afford more personnel, it keeps that hierarchy of going to an assistant city manager just strictly being planning. And I'll just make the statement that in years past, the social service and the economic development was under the city manager. I think it was better served being under the city manager. So I would like to see that go back to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Carrison?
Was it general services? Was that previous combined,
General services,
right? Isn't that what it had social services, parks
parks.
and recs?
If you go back, it also had
HR,
IT and
right?
human resources, and at one point, I believe it also had property maintenance.
And we had risk.
Yes.
Okay, so it was the general,
That was
it
general
was the one that
services.
Sherry Borsdorf had run.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I'm thinking of the same one. Okay, so,
That changed about 2 years ago when we created the Parks Department, and we moved social services under one of the assistant city managers. And prior to that, HR had become its own department already, and property maintenance has been under a couple different people for a long time.
right, okay. All right, and then, so we're looking at the option A versus B, correct? Is that
Yes,
what we're
ma'am.
looking at? All right.
Option B is what we're doing right now.
Okay, so it's not really an option. It's really stay as it is or go to option A. Okay, that's what I was trying to, there is no really two choices. I wanted to clarify that.
because what was presented in the budget, actually, option B, when you guys approved the budget, it was presented to you as neighborhood development services, and like I stated back in June, it's just not working.
Right,
So
right.
we've moved some of these to make them have a better span of control.
Mhm.
And there's been some changes and that's why we got to option B right now.
Okay. So option A is a little different than what it used to look like because assistant city managers had more control over those individual departments. I'm pretty sure I have an old,
Can I interrupt for just 1 second?
yeah.
City manager, I had asked to get a updated org chart for fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21. I haven't received them yet. Do you have such animals?
Yes, ma'am. I got your request, came in Saturday
I
night.
know, it came in
Extremely
late,
late,
and I was hoping that it
unfortunately.
already existed and it would be just a quick shoot the email
They
out,
don't
but-
exist in my email, so I had to get them, and it was Saturday night,
Yeah.
and it's now Monday morning.
Okay.
So yes, I have them.
Do you have enough for everybody, or did you just make it for me since I requested?
Nope, I have enough. Part of the reason I didn't hand them out is because you all have a policy of not handing stuff out within 24 hours of the meeting. And trying to follow policies.
I appreciate it.
Right,
Could we
what's
please
stated.
have that, because I think it would be very helpful to know what we have in place.
Oh, I thought that was B.
Now, those are I don't believe the 19 one is in there. Again, we were trying to scramble this morning to get what you asked for. Each one is its own pack.
Ooh, very blue.
Thank you, city manager. Go ahead, Commissioner Harrison. Thank you for that. Okay, wait, so,
So the top page is this year's budget. The next two are what's also in the backup. We couldn't get the 19 one fast enough in order to get copies made for everybody down here, but if you'd like, we can still get them. They're also online.
I was just gonna say, aren't they on the front page of the budget? That's where, no, in 19, okay,
I looked, that's why I had to
Gotcha.
ask for it.
makes
So,
sense.
I'm sorry, what is page 2? It says 36 authorized positions. What is that year's implication?
That's what we're doing right now. As I told you, we've split up neighborhood development services administratively so that Mr. Miles is only over building, the administrative services, and code enforcement. And page 3 has what we're proposing to have a planning director and who they would be over.
So page 3 is plan is,
What we'd like to do.
so this is, okay, so this is an option. Okay, so page 1 is what?
Page 1 is what we were working on at the beginning of the budget process this year.
So is that what
The
was
20 budget,
fiscal year
or
20?
21, the 2021 budget, the one that just started 19 days ago.
Is page 1. Page 2 and 3 is what is proposed, correct?
Yes.
So, the Division of Natural Resources, which we have talked about for years, when is that, and I'm not sure, maybe Mr. Miles would know this more than anyone, when is it that the environmentalist and the arborist and all those natural resources actually step in and become a part of the process?
So when somebody, I can tell you the arborist comes in when you apply for a permit or you want to do anything with trees. That's one of their big areas. Mr. Miles is welcome to come down if he wants to explain this process better than I can.
Yeah.
So they come in at an early portion. It depends on the permit you're pulling.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll let him explain how they do it.
For the record, Frank Miles, Director of Neighborhood Development Services. The arborists are involved, as the city manager stated, whenever there's any development proposal, a permit, application that is submitted to the city to be processed, building permits, subdivision development. They are part of the city's SDR process, providing their input on those types of matters, landscaping, etc. So they are at the front end, Commissioner.
That's what I was trying to get at right there. So it would make more sense for it to be part of the building, even though it's its own body of sorts, right? I mean,
That's possible.
okay. Because I'm just trying to make sure that I can see it as both on the planning side as well as the building side, so.
They have functions in both areas. The reason to put them under planning is because like the whole SDR process, the staff development review, that's a planning function. They're heavily involved with that. When people come in to get, to do any kind of development, the arborist is heavily involved in that, which is before they get to the building side. So in order to get all of that, that's why we put them under planning.
So maybe they do need to be independent, that they're kind of a shared agency similar to IT, similar to HR, similar to any of those, that they need to be under, say, an assistant city manager, or something other than those three kind of existing or proposed positions. I'm just
And that's
trying
why,
to talk out loud at this point.
that's why if you notice in the future plan, eventually we would get there, where they would be a division manager that would report to the director, just like the planning manager does in the economic development social services. So
That was.
option A, future.
Future, there it is. Okay. So they would, oh, I see. Okay, so it is planned to.
That is the plan goal.
Mhm.
But again, trying to operate within the restraints we have. Adding people is expensive.
I gotcha. So what if you did create these different departments, okay? And while they're not funded, they'll still exist, and you can fund them as you go, because that was kind of similar to what we did in MGT study, because I was here for that. They deleted a lot of positions. They added a lot of divisions. They added a lot of departments. But not all of them were funded like right away. It was like a goal. It was a plan. It took a few years. And I swear we updated that. Like we took that MGT study, just so you know, and I want to say it was like 2005 or 6, and called them back to do an update. So might have to look into that.
We look into that.
But the MGT study that was proposed to the commission in 2001 was not what was accepted. They picked and they chose and they kind of ripped it apart to only be this much of what the study actually asked for. So a lot of it was based off of personalities. So just so you know that too. So I guess my question is, if we were to assume the option A, future, then nothing prevents us from doing that either, correct?
Nothing prevents really the commission from doing any of these options. That's up to you all.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to clarify that just because we don't have it funded doesn't necessarily mean we can't direct for this and then, worry about the budgeting in the future.
Correct.
Okay, all right. I wanted to clarify. All right, I'm good for right now. Thank you.
Seeing no other lights on, I'll go ahead and jump in. So I have to admit, I'm disappointed because the recommendation is to go with A. That was what was in the backup materials, staff's recommendation is to go with A. But in order to make a decision requires the financial impact. And there is nothing about how much any of this is going to cost. no cost for a director, no costs for moving people around. And in order for me to make a decision and really be informed, I have to know those expenses associated with the recommendation.
Can I help with that?
Yes, please, because I would have
the
thought
director
that would be
position-
included.
Director position's been given to you all. It was given to you back in July, $143,000 for salary, benefits, and everything else associated with that position. As far as moving people, we had gotten to the very early stages of even investigating that option, and y'all changed directions in July. It was literally told people, hey, why don't you see what it would take if we can do this? Not a dime was spent, no moving was done. Contracts would have to come in front of commission. Requires a lot of work to get that information on staff's part. And as you know, time is the one thing that's most valuable resource and scarce resource we have. When commission made the decision to put this on hold, we put the entire thing on hold. I'm not going to spend a lot of staff resources to investigate what it's going to take to move if we're not going to even move forward with this process at all. So when commission put this on hold, we put it on hold. Because again, we also don't know if people will move. That was a possibility that we were investigating. As you all know, there was a lot made out of that investigation into whether that was actually going to happen. A lot of assumptions were made that city manager directed people to just go ahead and start spending money and doing everything, when actually what he directed people was to find out what it would take. So I don't know what it would take to move all the people because we haven't moved forward with that.
So if we went with staff's recommendation, which I presume is your recommendation
Yes, ma'am.
ultimately, to go with A,
Mhm.
where's the money going to come from for the director? Because again,
As
It's
you
just-
yourself stated in the workshop, Mayor, it would come from a budget amendment.
okay,
You specifically
Right.
stated, we can do a budget amendment and fund this position, which is what we would do.
but where does the money come from? We had to cut $3 million out of the budget in August.
Yes, we did.
And we have a priority list.
Mhm.
And that priority list, I'm sorry, doesn't even include the reorg. It doesn't include a director's position. I'm using that priority list as things that staff and everybody had thought was the ultimate priority of what order to do things in. And reorg isn't even on there. So where does the money come from?
It would come from fund balance. Again, the position's already in the budget. It's just not funded.
Right.
You all directed to leave the position in the budget, to
Correct.
unfund it, and said, well, we can do it a budget amendment because there will be money added back to fund balance at the end of the year, and we'll just fund it out of that.
So
Actually, the subsequent conversation was, I hope we don't reduce the millage rate with this savings. And then ultimately, we did anyway.
So using this list of priorities, I mean, one of the largest things that is hanging over, before I get there, do we know yet what moved from end of fiscal year 20 into fund balance as unspent expenses?
No, ma'am, because the year's not closed yet.
Okay.
We are still paying last year's bills and due all the way through the end of November.
So one of the biggest things that was hanging over our head during the budget talks was the interlocal agreement for parks. Haven't heard any movement, so I am going to assume that we are going to have to still take over parks because we haven't gotten anything to the contrary, which costs over $1 million. And that is number one to fund with any of the unspent fund balance until we get an agreement. So we have to keep that money in that kitty until after we know for sure what's going on with the interlocal. So when are you wanting to put out there for a director to have option A started?
I can't do anything until you all tell me that you're okay with it, and then you pass an ordinance 5-0 creating this department. That in itself takes at least a month. At this point in time, if you direct the city attorney to move forward with that ordinance, and I will let her answer how fast she can get that ordinance done. And then you all will vote 5-0. If you vote 5-0 to do it and create these new departments, it will probably take no less than 90 days to hire the person. So let's just, by some miracle, say that the first reading of this ordinance was on October 27th and the second one is on November 10th. 90 days after that, I believe, takes us somewhere into February. That's making a lot of assumptions.
Correct, correct.
Biggest one being that all 5 of you agree to it.
So since this hasn't been approved, right now, Mr. Miles is taking care of building and code enforcement, and Mr. Yarborough is taking care of the other 4 divisions.
No, ma'am. Mr. Yarborough is taking care of planning. I'm taking care of economic development and social services.
Okay, because I thought I saw in the org chart that you are doing planning. Oh, that's if it's recommended option A. I apologize. Thank you. So thank you for the discussion about the money. City attorney, if we were to go with the option B or even not change anything, would that require an ordinance?
Option B is the current situation with the divisions being in the city manager's office, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So your charter only speaks to the activation or deactivation of departments. It does not speak to divisions. And then going through the kind of the history of what's been done in the city, we did not come across any time where divisions were moved and ordinances were adopted to do that. For example, when 2 of these divisions, social services and economic development, were moved to NDS, we did not do that by ordinance. So, you know, the commission interprets its own charter. And what I would say is that the charter does not address a move of a division, just the creation, the activation or deactivation of a department. So unless the commission deems that moving a division is so inherent to the nature of the department that it constitutes a deactivation of the department, then it would not be required by unanimous ordinance. Would not be required to be done by unanimous ordinance.
Okay, so B doesn't require an ordinance.
I don't believe that it does.
Okay, but A definitely does.
That is my opinion. And that A is by unanimous vote under the charter.
We don't know when that changed, right? Or
The
it's always
unanimous?
been there.
I did not research when that changed. I did look at the charter in 2011, you know, when these, as you said, administrative
Yeah.
changes were made, and the word unanimous did not appear in 2011, but I did not investigate when it came into the charter. It is there now.
Does this reorg, whether option A, option B, or another option, does it have to go through legal review of any kind?
The ordinance, we draft the
You
ordinance.
draft the ordinance is the only time that you would look at it for legal review.
I believe so. The city manager's office did send some of this history to us for legal review to talk about the process, to weigh in on the process. He did ask my opinion on that. But otherwise, no.
So I'm trying to think of a nice way and a professional way to ask this question. So I'm working on this, trying. We have our strategic plan. And based on the strategic plan, we had a one-stop shop for first floor. That was so citizens could come in and go to planning, they can go to building, they can go to code enforcement. All the departments seem to talk to each other. And it's in the strategic plan to have a complete streamlined process to stimulate economic development and enhance customer service.
I don't remember that.
We also, right
No,
there.
I know, but I didn't think that had anything to do with the first floor, but go ahead.
We also have a CIP sheet. That's CIP BD20NR that says having one central location will also help the planning and building divisions to work more cohesively when transitioning from a project review to making a permit application. So that kind of goes back to that one-stop shop. How does this reorg fit in with our strategic plan and our CIP process?
I think it actually fits in very well. First of all, it's the one-stop shop. Somebody can come in and drop off all of their plans, or whether they do it electronically or on paper, and come to one place. And then when they bring and drop off stuff now, fire department reviews it, public works reviews it, utilities reviews it. When somebody comes in and drops plans off, they don't have to go to all those places.
Mm-hmm.
And the CIP had nothing to do with floor location as far as one-stop shop. The strategic plan, I mean, you can come in and drop it off, and then we can electronically or paper, either way, send it to all the appropriate places so that the customer coming in still has one stop to make, and we can distribute the documents appropriately. This fits in perfectly, actually, because again, putting this in place won't impact the customer at all. So just because you have the person report to somebody, Public Works does not report to Neighborhood Development Services, and they are heavily involved with development. So does utilities. Departments work together.
So is it the vision of this reorg to keep planning where it is, building where it is, generally speaking, planning where it is, building where it is, code enforcement where it is? Is that the general idea? Or because during the investigation, it was brought to light that there was the investigation report that there was plans to remodel third floor. So help me fill in that gap.
Okay, I will. First of all, planning was on the third floor. That area where Parks now
Well,
occupies,
it's never been on third floor since I've been here, so.
I gather that, but it has since I've been here. So if you look at the diagram upstairs on the third floor, it's all about planning. That department was the Planning, Zoning, and Engineering Department. It was set up when this building was built for that to be where it is. As far as what was in that investigation, like I stated, there was a lot of assumptions made. What was done, or what direction that was given, was to find out what the costs would be if we could even do that. There was no money spent. There was nothing done other than go find out so that I could present you all with what it would cost if we decided to do that. I can't sit here and tell you that it could be done for $1,000 or $2 million. I don't know because we stopped looking into it. But what I can tell you is not a dime was spent for that remodel of the third floor that a lot has been made, including today, about, because we were investigating. Because I'm not going to bring you all something and say, hey, we want to remodel the third floor. The first question you're going to ask me, what does it cost? And the only way for me to find out is to start investigating that, see what the options are, because I'm not a structural engineer. I don't know what walls can be moved, what walls can't be moved, what can be done in-house, what can be done, within a contractor. Had to find all of that out. We have procurement processes that have to be followed. There's a lot of information that needs to be gathered before you can remodel an area. Information I don't have and don't have the individual expertise to give you. To sit here and tell you that the plan is to move the planning up to the third floor or not, I would have to start that investigation. Again, I need to know if you're open and the commission is going to have a reorganization, because if you're not, then I'm not going to look into the next step. Next step is, again, if planning was all in one area, more, again, to help have proper oversight of all the people, because right now planning isn't in one area. They're split in two separate areas. So the planning manager doesn't even have all of her employees in the area where she sits right now because of size constraints. The third floor in what is the old planning, zoning, and engineering has a lot of open space, a lot of unoccupied space, because it wasn't designed for what's there right now. A lot has changed since we moved into this building in 2006. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, no, we wouldn't consider moving planning to the third floor, it's an option.
So we also, in this budget, had and I don't remember what the correct term is, but it was the old SLA, to have the building department do a study for efficiencies for the building department and planning, I think was included in that, to increase efficiencies for permitting and everything.
I thought that had to do with.
Y'all
the
added that
permit
back in
online.
July.
It's not just online, it's the entire permitting and planning process. It was to make things talk to each other better. Planning department, permitting department, code enforcement department, everybody talk to each other in a more efficient manner.
That was in June, not recommended. In July, y'all added it back in.
Correct, we put it back in. So it seems like, to me at least, we're putting the cart before the horse. Why not do that efficiency study and have it be part of the reorg ideas that you're having? And be able to do everything at one time instead of, hey, let's reorg, and then efficiencies come back and say, yeah, that was a dumb idea. We shouldn't have done it. We could do this and this and this instead. Or say, yeah, that's a great idea. We don't know. And I'm curious, why not wait until that efficiency study is complete?
So a few things. One is the study is paid for and done by the building department, building
Correct.
fund. It's for the building division is what the reorg is. If we want to expand it, it can't be paid for just by the building fund. So if you want to include planning and all the others in there, part of it has to be paid for out of the other fund. Because in order to do a study that's going to make them all work together, it would have to be jointly studied. My interpretation of that $70,000 that's in the budget is it's a management study for the building department.
Okay, well, thank you for that clarification.
Otherwise, it's misbudgeted.
I thought it was just a software deal that.
No, it's
the
not. It's a
software
management
didn't-
study.
It's everything.
Okay.
And it
I
wasn't,
didn't
like I
understand
said,
that.
I didn't recommend it in the first place because I believe that it's something that we can do internally.
So, you know how much I love rumors?
Almost as much as me, probably.
Yeah. So I had a citizen or two, possibly three, tell me that there's actually remodeling going on the third floor now. And
Good to know. I'd like to see where it is.
Okay. So is there any remodeling going on, departments moving around, moving from one place to another, anything happening, whether it be only on paper or actually physically movement of changing anything on third floor?
So the only thing that is being investigated on the third floor, and that's again, I believe,
paper?
barely even on paper.
Okay.
So finance department has a conference room that originally was set up. It was originally designed so that they could have their purchasing public meetings in there. When they have bid openings, other meetings, they're required to be recorded. They have to be, they're public meetings, probably the best way to word it. Require recording, require the clerk's office to be involved. So when that was built, there wasn't enough money at the time to put recording software in there. So what they're looking into is moving the recording software that's in room 308 over to the finance conference room and putting the doorway out into the main lobby of the third floor. But again, the finance director asked me if we could complete that process. My statement was originally on a Friday afternoon, you can start moving forward with investigating that. I believe I told her yes. And then on Saturday, to make sure that I was abundantly clear, because as we all learned during the investigation, not everything that I say is heard the way that I think I've said it. So I sent an email to the finance director and copied her boss, which is one of the assistant city managers, as well as property maintenance, and said, want to make sure everybody understands what I gave permission for on Friday, which is to investigate the process, not to spend a dime. No work is to be done until you give me more information. So there is no remodeling that I'm aware of going, but somebody is looking into something, which would eventually come back to you all.
Appreciate that, and put that rumor to rest once and for all.
I'm sure it's not the only one out there
I'm
that's
sure there's
floating around.
plenty of
Unlikely.
I am almost done, just a couple little ones. So in your option A, the director, and then there's the arborist, and it sounds like this is, I'm sorry, it looks like all of this is general fund personnel, except for the arborist. The arborist is partly paid through building and partly paid through tree fund. How is that going to be under a department that isn't even in the building department? How is that?
Who they do the work for, who they benefit.
Correct,
So the tree fund would still partially fund the arborist.
okay?
And you have me, I don't know that, I take your word for it that they're partially funded out of the building fund, because I don't know where the other half comes from. I thought it was a general fund.
Maybe we could get somebody to finance to, because I thought the building department helped fund because they got a vehicle out of the building department.
They may have gotten a vehicle from there, of one that was older, but I thought, I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm sure somebody's looking into that right now.
I thought it was general.
I
fund
believe it's general
also.
fund as well, because I know that when we talked about moving them to have them 100% funded, it was out of the general fund.
Well, we'll have to look at that closer. I would like to get some clarity on that too. Going to option B, the one that you're currently doing now. All of the departments and report to a, do you want me to wait?
So they're half out of the general fund. Planning's in the general fund. So they're half out of the tree fund and half out of the general
Okay,
fund.
so it's not out of the building fund?
No, ma'am.
Can I ask a question on that? Just real quickly.
Go ahead.
So if the natural resources jumps underneath building, can they be part of the building fund?
The way the building fund works is it has to be necessary for
With
building.
codes.
Correct. To
But
enforce the building
isn't-
code.
Isn't the arborist and natural
building code.
resources part
Building
of?
code.
Damn it, I'm trying.
It's a nice try.
So close, I was right there.
So if you go to option B, which is what you have stated is currently the way you're doing things. Why is there no director between the city manager and the planning manager?
Because you all unfunded that position.
There is just not funded, right?
So that director would be like a dotted line,
Which is what's in option A.
which is then option A. Okay,
We don't have a director right now that's over planning.
okay.
There are other division managers that report directly to assistant city managers or the city manager, such as social services, economic development, IT, and why am I at a loss for another one? That's it. That's why.
Okay, so the planning and zoning, if you went with option A, planning and zoning, social services, and economic development would report directly to you?
Director.
Sorry, if I went to what?
No, if I'm looking at the citywide organizational chart, recommended option A. It's the last page of the PowerPoint.
Okay.
This is what I got in backup. I don't know.
It may be if you could put the last page of the PowerPoint up on the screen.
I'm assuming you're not talking the
No,
questions.
I have no idea where that came from.
The backup?
Mhm.
It's in the backup.
Oh, mine's black and white. Maybe that's why it looks different. I just printed it in black and white. If you look at that bottom one in the center, it says Department and Environmental Affairs. It has planning, social services, economic development, directly reporting to you, the city manager.
The director of, there'd be one director, which would be Development of Environmental Affairs. So under option A, you have a director that would be over those three divisions. Only the director would report to me, not the division managers.
This is the same as this.
Okay, so these,
So I would have 1, 2, 3, 4 people plus the 2 assistant city managers reporting directly to me.
Okay, so it'd be similar to Chief Titus and Chief Garrison reporting to you, whoever that director would be reporting to you also.
Yes, ma'am.
Gotcha, okay. City manager, with all due respect, don't you have other things that you need to be doing than to have another director reporting directly to you? I just,
And that's something that
and
we,
that's the whole purpose of why, see, this goes back to the whole purpose of why we hired a second assistant city manager.
and that's something we can look, I mean, if you want that one reporting to one of the assistant city managers, that could be an option.
I just, you know, all right. I think I have one more and then I will. Okay, I'll yield the floor. I might find my other ones. I thought I had two more, but I'll go ahead and yield it to Vice Mayor.
I actually like economic development, social service being under the city manager. It was done that way in the past. Actually, it's seamless, especially for economic development, to have two people in between that. I don't see it working as well as being a standalone. Social service too. Actually, both of those divisions were shoved under neighborhood development, and I think that probably helped to create some of the problem that we have. So I personally like that being placed back under the city manager. I have no problem with a hybrid to what Commissioner Carazone was talking about. I have no problem with dividing the two from NDS apart into two departments. I have no problem doing that. Going ahead and allowing the city attorney to create that ordinance. I have no problem, just as we did during budget, putting positions in place but not funding them so that they can be done later in time. So as I look at option A, the future, I have no problem with the way that it is on the left because your director is not going to be there. Thank you, sir. Your director is not going to be there. There's going to be an assistant manager. So until you have the money for a director to be put in place, they just go to that assistant city manager. So I have no problem putting in the natural resource manager, the archaeologist, and in later years or when the finance comes, we fully fund that and put those positions in place. I think that achieves what we've strove to do at least all 3 years that I've been on the commission. But the right side of that future, the social service and the economic development, I would personally run that straight up to the city manager the way that it's being done in option B. I think after it's aligned like that in the future, as you start bringing in those places, putting people in those positions that are created, if it needs to be tweaked, then it can be tweaked. But in the time being, I believe this could work very well until we do have the finances that's needed to enhance it even more. Thank you.
Commissioner Carrison.
The option A future, because I agree with Vice Mayor. I think that's what we need to concentrate on and figure out how to get there. I mean, we had an engineering department in the MGT study that we didn't finance or fund for like 6 years. So, but if you look at option A in the future, the director we have in the actual budget, we just didn't fund it, and we know that was $143,000, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The natural resources manager, that wasn't really anywhere, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we don't even have a rough estimate of that one.
No, ma'am.
Okay, but we did have the archaeologist in there that we removed, which was 60,000, I feel like.
Sounds like the right ballpark.
I feel like it was around 60,000, if anybody can just shake their head. I feel like it was. But we removed the whole position, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we would have to, okay. So we're talking about roughly like 300,000, but those are the only three positions that don't exist, right?
that are
At a future,
unfunded.
right, that are unfunded, I'm sorry. So
One's
the-
unfunded and two are not in there at all.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to be clear on where we're at here. Okay, so one exists but is unfunded, which is the director. And then the natural resource manager and the archaeologist is actually taking completely out of it. And that's what needs to be put back in. Okay.
Correct, because
Along with,
they kind of go in order of, you have the director, which is in there. So the position itself exists in the budget, but there's no money for it in there.
right.
The archaeologist, we've done all the research on, but that position doesn't exist in the budget either. And it's not just unfunded, it's been removed from the budget. And I make that distinction because a position that's in the budget but isn't funded, if we find the money, could be done. Wouldn't be a smart move, but it could be done administratively.
Okay.
The natural resources manager is not in the budget, has not had the research done. We don't know what the cost of it. So they're kind of work your way down. One's in there but no money. One's got all the research done but not in there and no money. And one we don't know anything about.
But a budget amendment, because I
Could fix
know
all
we
of it.
did that with, it wasn't parks, maybe it was social services that we did it like mid-year budget where we shifted it and it went under, but it already existed. So would that be, so let's just say that ordinance comes back and we have these positions, then at some point, if the money comes back to us that we find we have like $5 million that came in versus 2 million, we could actually budget these positions.
It would require a budget amendment.
Right, with a budget
The two
amendment.
would definitely require a budget amendment. The third one would be
just
wise to do a budget
okay,
amendment for.
all
Doesn't
right.
require it.
All right, because I agree wholeheartedly that natural resources department really, really needs to be implemented. I pushed for that in the beginning, but then we were forced with this shortfall, so that was the concern. But an archaeologist is absolutely necessary considering our makeup, our identity, our history in this city. As far as social services and economic development being under the city manager, I too remember when that happened. Is there a way to show what the assistant city managers will have underneath them? Because that, I actually only saw the one where the assistant city manager will be seeing, thank you. Okay, now I get it. Okay, thank you. I need to print that.
So I did remember my questions. This commission, and forgive me, Commissioner Umrich, you may or may not have been on board with this next statement. I don't know if you were elected at that point. Social services was moved from city manager to neighborhood development services. Do you remember when that was done?
I do. It was actually moved from the assistant city manager.
Okay,
So when we created the Parks Department a couple years ago, it was social services was part of general services, and we
Right.
moved social services underneath and IT underneath assistant city manager, one of the assistant city managers. Last year, I believe it was in April. It was earlier on during last calendar year, 2019.
April-ish.
I believe it was April, somewhere around that time frame. Social services was moved under neighborhood development services. And then on October 1, officially economic development was moved under neighborhood development services as well. You all got a memo on both of those. We talked about it at public meetings, and you asked for when it was going to be implemented to be sent to you all. I remember sending a memo to you all for both of those. And one, I believe, was October 1, and one was, I want to say April, roughly.
So a conscious decision was made to move them to neighborhood development services.
Yes, ma'am.
And if I remember correctly, it was so that they could, again, all talk to each other about the needs. You can't plan if you don't know the needs of social services. You can't plan if you don't know the needs with economic development, or, hey, what will this planned development have on economic development? The whole purpose was for them to all talk to each other.
Correct.
The
The three of them fit very well together.
Okay, so then why are we separating them again?
Because again, it's too much for one director to oversee. The three of them will fit neatly under one
That
director.
said, why?
We didn't know. We tried something, it didn't work. If you would, the alternative is for us to continue to do things, we always do them and never try new things.
Can I
Yeah.
add to
And
that?
I
This was an
understand
effort,
that,
and
but-
I'll be the first one to admit, it didn't work.
Okay, and that's what I needed to hear, because in my mind, it is, hey, we're gonna do this because they all need to talk to each other, they all need to work together. This
Great
is-
idea.
And now I am hearing the rest of the story that it didn't work.
It's a
Thank you.
great idea, but didn't work out. The way the idea was in my head, sure looked good.
I can.
And we tried it, everybody that we talked to, including you all, great idea. The way I sold it to you, great idea, sounds good. Reality kicked in.
Yeah,
And I'm not trying to be flippant about it, I'm just telling you why I'm taking ownership of this, is everybody thought it was a good idea. I still think the three divisions working together is a great idea, because as you just stated, Mayor, if you're going to do economic development, you have to plan for it. Social services needs to be planned for. Planning fits well with those two. It
All
just created too big of a department.
Well, one of the biggest reasons that I was in agreement with social service going with NDS is because Frank had experience with grants and things like that. Now we got this wonderful grant writer.
Mhm.
And so it no longer fits, and the purpose that I thought it was going to be able to achieve didn't. So to me, that is, I'll take onus on that too. Economic development, I have always thought that needed to be under city manager, so that one I won't take onus to.
Thank you.
There were a lot of good ideas, a lot of reasons why it could have worked. Again, sometimes, good ideas are great ideas and not great execution.
Yeah.
Other
And
factors kicked
that
in that
was the
somebody doesn't think
piece-
about.
That was the piece of the puzzle that I was missing, to get a full understanding of why it's moving back, when everybody seemed to be, hey, let's move them down to NDS. So,
Every time you come up with a great idea,
Thank
you
you.
may not think of all the butterfly effects.
They were
Commissioner Harrison.
originally under general services, and then they went to an assistant city manager when the general services manager left. And then they went to, so they've been kind of
Social
all over the
services,
place.
As
Social
poor Janet
services,
has made
yeah.
it very clear to me, she's
God
had
bless
many
her.
different bosses. It seems like an annual occurrence for her.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
So,
And
That
we're
makes it
we're
very
trying to get her a
difficult.
little stability.
yeah, and
but the reasoning, as I understand it, because I remember us discussing this during budget workshops repeatedly, was that the building and the planning were ultimately going to be separated out at some point, and that building actually had a better connectivity to social services and to economic development. Well, I'm not sure about the economic development part, but I know it had a connectivity to social services, because not only did Mr. Miles have a lot of experience on not just the grant portion, but also understanding some of the other aspects of it. So that's why it made sense at the time. But again, that was all kind of the reason why I thought it was a great idea was because I really did have this future where the building was going to have its own independency as well as the planning and then someone overseeing all that. So that's the only reason, or else I would have never said put everything underneath him, because that's just too much for one human being, no matter where you go. I guess the other question is if we move economic development under and social services under the city manager like it used to be, because I remember those days. Maybe that's not such a bad idea, because then it kind of frees up those other two divisions for expansion. Because I think at one point, we're still going to get to that point where we're gonna need an engineering department. Like, all those things that we used to have in 2005, 2006, the rate of growth, they're gonna have to be re-implemented. And having that whole, natural resource division on its own, I really am concerned that we may be talking about right back to square one, where if we have social services and economic development under a manager, we'll be back to square one where we say it's too much for one person. Because just building, planning, and natural resources alone is going to be astronomical.
And I'm not recommending building and planning both be under the same director.
No. I just realized what I said was wrong, so yes, I see what you're saying. So the planning, the natural resources would be under one director. Building would be
With code enforcement under a different director.
under a different director. And then there would be, and those would be to the assistant city managers. I guess I'm missing the larger graph is what I'm missing. That's probably what it is. Okay.
Can I ask a question? How can we, I know we're trying to prepare for the future.
Mhm.
But in order to prepare for the future, we have to have the money to be able to do it. Right now, it seems like there's a need now for planning to go somewhere or keep it where you have it on this option B. Option B has planning going through Assistant City Manager Yarborough, correct?
Mhm. Yes, ma'am.
So
But that's exactly what the future shows. Because if you look at the
expanding the
future
structure.
one, the director goes to the assistant manager, who then goes to the city manager, but the director is unfunded. So that's why you have all those guys going straight to the assistant, because there's no director funded at this point.
So in option A, I think there's a tier missing.
Correct.
Option A, switch it down just a little bit. Who does that director report to?
City manager, right?
No.
That director right under under option A, that director would report to the city manager.
Which brings me back to my initial statement, don't you have better things to do?
Well, the nice thing is, if you go under option A, I actually have one less direct report than I have right now. Right now, social services and economic development report directly to me. Those two would report to this one who would report to me. I would actually have less direct reports if you went with option A than I do right now.
When looking at this chart, it's got development and economic affairs. I believe the social service and the economic development need to be under you, but I believe that planning and the natural resource needs to be under an assistant first that goes to you. So I see a division in that development and economic affairs. If we go with
That's what I have.
what Commissioner Carazone and I were talking about, it puts that planning manager, because, I mean, is that not why they're going to an assistant manager right now? You know?
But isn't
Because
natural?
One of the reasons.
there's not a director.
Time, guys.
There's not a director, so they're going to an assistant, so it makes
Right.
sense that that director would go to an assistant city manager for planning, and then that assistant would go to you. But then putting the economic development in the social service under you on this chart.
I am fine with either
I
one.
think we're all saying the same
It
thing.
brings back to the question that the mayor just asked. I will have 2 instead of 1 direct report there.
Mhm.
I am perfectly fine with either way. I think the strongest argument that, if you want my number 1 request here, is that you need to split the departments up like we've administratively done and create the director position. And eventually work towards getting the full natural resources. So
There's another reason.
this one right here is where I see the city's future getting to. Whether you move social services and economic development out from under this one and put it directly under me, that's great. Then where Janet doesn't have to have another new boss again. But I'm fine with that because I can tell you they'll still work together.
Can you flip to the overall chart again?
Yes, ma'am.
One of the reasons that I believe the planning needs to be under the assistant is because building is. And there is, how did the study state, and they're not directly, but they're indirectly related. So with both of those departments going to an assistant city manager, you have that.
They can fight it out and the assistant can be the referee.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And then he comes to you with what both of those departments are saying. Otherwise, it's you getting an earful, him getting an earful. And to me, it's a lot simpler if he or she were to have both of them under them, and they can do that collaboration. He speaks to the one department because he knows what the other one is doing. To me, it's far less confusion if you have both of those departments that are indirectly under assistant.
And I think that's exactly what I have written down here, is to have Assistant City Manager Yarborough continue with building, public utilities, and public works, and put the planning under
Yes.
him, and you keep social services and economic development.
I'm fine with that.
That's perfect to me.
That, because right now, we don't have the funding for a director. That's something we're 3 weeks into budget. We don't even have our final fund balance stuff.
Yeah,
So
I
we
think you
don't
will,
have
though.
that number yet. So maybe in 3 months, maybe in 5 months, we can have another discussion on it. Once we get these final figures and we see where we are on this priority list. But for right now, it makes more sense to put planning back under Assistant City Manager Yarborough, and you to keep the social services and economic development, and have another discussion once we get the money and the finances all squared away for the end of the fiscal year.
I'm in agreement with the way you're talking about having it out, but I am also in agreement with forming the division, with
That-
placing or forming the departments with those positions and then funding them as allowed. And they can be at the bottom of the priority if you want, but we are talking about the future, and we are taking steps to it. And it's not gonna all come in one time. It's not going to. But why kick the can down the road?
We're good at it.
When you can form what you envision to be the best of this for the city, and then as the funds come, it may be next year, it may be the year after, but at least we have this vision of how this is going to be set up and designed. So I actually want to do both. You know, I want the flow chart to show the way that the mayor described, but I also would like to divide NDS into those 2 departments, having a place for those 3 positions. And then fund them as we get the money.
Can I ask a city attorney a question? City attorney, can we create this ordinance with phantom positions that will at some point in the future be filled, as Vice Mayor was saying, the money becomes available, or possibly next budget or 5 years budget, however that's gonna work? Or is it better to do it?
Can I answer part of that real quick for you? First of all, the ordinances don't create positions.
No, they
I
don't.
understand
The
that.
departmental creating ordinances
Right.
have nothing to do with positions.
Correct.
But you're creating departments that
Will say what their ultimate goal is. The ordinances says what the departments do, the ones that we've created, give
But-
certain tasks, and it might say oversees natural resources, oversees planning. Not once does it create a position, though.
But if you, I'm sorry, if you don't have anybody for that department, how can you create a department?
You do have a bunch of people for that department,
Just planning.
and arborists, which would fall under
Mhm.
natural
Well,
resources,
that's planning.
environmentalists, which would fall under natural resources.
That's planning.
So that's just who they're reporting to right now. But if you go with
Future.
this one right here, you can see, you could create it and say they're in charge of natural resources. And just because you don't have a natural resources manager doesn't mean that you don't have an ordinance that says that this Department of Developmental Environmental Affairs is in charge of natural resources planning, and as you all discussed, getting rid of the social service and economic development out of here. Over time, positions are always created inside of a department.
Correct.
We've,
No, I know that.
I mean, I can tell you in 2008 was when we started having an arborist. Only because he started here the same day I did.
But if you create an ordinance for these departments, that to me is saying, hey, we have these departments and now we have nobody filling these positions. We have to budget for these positions. We have to put money in for these positions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because these are the departments that were done in this ordinance.
But again, that's what I said, is you're creating an ordinance that creates a department and says what that department does. Your level of natural resources management is up to the commission. Saying that you want a department that one of their functions is to manage natural resources, a very valid argument could be made that the arborist and the environmental technician are protecting your natural resources. Now, if you decide you want to do more, then maybe you
Yes.
hire an archaeologist.
Yes.
That doesn't change the ordinance to create a department because you're just enhancing the natural resources management that the city is doing.
I would hope that that ordinance includes our, and I don't know how you would actually state it, or archaeological artifacts or whatever, the preservation or however you say that. I would hope that that natural resources manager would have all of it encompassed, but I would think that's up to the city manager to determine what positions, which would then be put into the budget, which is when the discussion would take place with the commission,
And the
correct?
commission policy decision on that would be, do you want to expand, how do you want to define what natural resources management, not a manager, but management is? Is it, we're gonna
I
count
thought it
number of
was
trees, you're gonna
environmental
chop
and
down, or do you
natural.
want to be stronger on trees? You're gonna say, do you want to
No.
protect archaeological resources, or are you just gonna say, we're gonna document? I mean,
thought it
you can
was
see where there's a
all called
spectrum
something
of functions, all fall under natural resources management. That
Environmental.
spectrum
No, I thought it was
is
something else.
determined by the commission as far as how much you want to put in something like that. So the statement that, Mayor, that you were wondering is, yes, you would put in the ordinance, you want to manage natural resources. How and to what degree you want to do that is determined in future years
Gotcha.
through the budget process of, and I guess a great example is our police department right now. You think about, we've added community policing in the last year or two, and we've, established a new unit in the police department through the budget process, saying we're going to hire a community policing group. the ones that sit currently over at the social services building. You didn't change the ordinance creating the police department at all because you decided as a commission through the budget process, we needed more resources. We wanted to enhance the service we're providing to our community.
Commissioner Carrison.
Lost it. See, now you got that going my way. All right, so real quickly though, now I finally got the bigger chart. You have an assistant city manager who's overlooking finance, human resources, IT, and parks. Then we have another one who's doing the building, the
What
public.
are you looking at, ma'am?
This, what's on the screen.
Thank you.
Building, public works. Where is economic development under?
They're under the city manager in the very bottom box under development and environmental affairs.
There it is, okay. So it would be a matter of, oh, okay. So this
So
is,
planning is just basically moving over to under assistant city
You would
manager.
take that box, you'd split it in half. You have development and environmental
Yeah,
affairs
yeah,
over
yeah,
underneath
yeah, yeah.
the assistant city manager that's on the right as I look at the screen. And you would have two little boxes, one for social service and one for economic development, similar to the
Okay,
communications one
okay.
at the top,
Yep,
staying underneath the city manager.
I see what you're saying. Okay, and then, I was going somewhere else with that. Division of Natural Resources. I thought
Would be part of-
maybe it was when we were talking about, the actual board. That we named the board division, or the board of,
You have the historical natural resources
right,
advisory board.
that's what it was, because they were supposed to do both, the archaeological side as well as the natural resource side, and maybe that's what we need to look closer at versus just natural resources, because again, I really, really worry about the archaeological side not being paid attention to in this city. And
If I may, I understand where you're coming from, but to reiterate what he has said, in the future years, we can change these things around. That natural resource manager, to me, is a sustainability manager. And they then can aid planning, they can aid the commission, they can aid the city manager in multiple ways, which would include historical. I mean, those
I
sustainability
worry that if you
managers
don't
are-
put that in there, it won't happen.
You can add that to
I
that
mean-
box. It says when you split that last box, you can say planning and zoning, and then have another one that says natural resources.
Right.
Again, right now, your arborist would fall under there, this is, keep in mind, this chart assumes option A. And eventually, if the commission directs in the future, would assume option A future. But right now, what it assumes is option A, which has your natural resources people right here under planning. But if you chose to adopt option A future instead, natural resources would be here.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at, is to adopt option A future, but that natural resources be renamed to something that
It could be,
What
as
if
the
we
vice mayor
do,
said, sustainability. You can-
why not make it both, natural resource and sustainability?
well, sustainability doesn't really grab hold of the historical side
But
of
that's
things.
gonna
you know
all
what I
come
mean?
back in the ordinance.
Correct.
So,
Really, well,
yeah, it's all gonna come back in the ordinance as
What's
to
going to be in the
what they're going to
ordinance
be in
is
charge
what,
of.
Yeah.
yeah, what, and the city attorney can correct me if I'm wrong, what's going to be in the ordinance is your overarching goal of what you want
Right.
this department to do. Again, it's not going to name
Mm-hmm.
positions. If you want them to protect natural resources and do natural resources management, we can put that in there if that's the direction of the commission. If you wanted to also address sustainability, you can add that to it.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm good with the future A, but moving the social services and economic development under the city manager. as Vice Mayor said.
So basically,
It's this, look, it's, I
the-
got a
Left
little,
half.
I know.
I got a little V.
Mhm. That's, the yellow and the green is going directly up to the city manager.
Correct.
And the planning and the planning and natural
director.
resources is going up to assistant city manager. Yarborough.
No, up to a director that's
And
already,
then to
Then to an
assistants,
assistant.
and then to assistant city manager Yarborough. But we
Oh.
don't have a director.
an assistant city manager. I don't know why we
Correct.
have to use names because
Well,
this is 30 years down the
Right.
road.
I
Hopefully
get it.
Jason has left.
I-
30 years.
I'm glad to hear it. I have made this mention in a workshop 2 years ago
Mm-hmm.
about the restructure with the economic development and the social services. So I'm glad to hear we're going
Yes, you did.
on that.
So are we ready for a
Hang
motion?
on, not yet,
Did.
not yet. So
And
because we heard public comment at the beginning of our discussion, there has been public comment that has come in during our discussion. Do we want to hear public comment before we take a motion? Or do we want to hear it at the end of the meeting?
You'll hear it at the end of the meeting.
I'll get a consensus for hearing it now before we take a motion. Commissioner Hanks, consensus.
An ordinance.
I don't care.
I'm a no because I know one of them is strictly on a different topic, and this person has already talked on this. So I believe they should be the second comment or the last
General
comment
public comment.
anyhow.
Okay, so since we have a consensus on the floor, Commissioner Armich,
And then the meeting will be fine.
at the end of the
I
meeting,
agree with the vice mayor.
at the end of the meeting?
Yeah.
Thank you.
In the
Commissioner
proper
Harrison.
place.
Thank you. That's, I just wanted to, because they're giving public comment, we're getting ready to make a motion. I wanted that on the record, so thank you. I'll entertain a motion, please.
Direct city manager to
Implement.
to implement what was the direction given previously, to have the city attorney draft an ordinance dividing the Neighborhood Development Services Department into 2 departments. The flow of that department would be city manager, assistant city manager, director, and then the Department of Planning and a Department of Natural Resource and Historical Services.
Okay, we're gonna have to scooch
Can
this
I
down. Scooch this down a little bit.
Can I give it a
because-
shot? Just move to approve, move to direct city
Hold
manager
on. She
into
started-
option A
Hang on.
future
She started
by
her motion.
altering.
She has the motion on the floor.
I know, I'm
And
trying to help her.
I'm just saying that it's much too long and convoluted. If you could narrow it
It was a
down,
long and convoluted topic.
I understand.
So I will start over. I'm
Please.
sorry, city clerk, I know you did. So give direction to city manager to have city attorney continue with the direction that the city commission had given to divide neighborhood development into 2 departments, following the chart of option A, future, having the flow go city manager, assistant city manager, director, and then the 2 divisions of planning and natural resource and historical services. Within that chart, removing social service and economic development departments, placing them underneath the city manager.
And I'll second that.
Thank you, sir.
I'm still writing.
Well, city
All right.
clerk, I believe, has it. She could read
City
it if
clerk?
you want.
Yeah,
All
can you read that part back? Because I think you said splitting NDS into 2 departments, and I think it's a.
2 divisions.
No, 2 departments.
It's 2 departments.
Excuse
I'm
me,
still
2
waiting to hear the
departments,
second
right.
department. One department is future A. What is the second department? That's what I'm waiting to hear.
It's on the screen.
Thank you. She didn't say it in the
I
motion.
agree. It wasn't said.
Right, but this is one side.
Oh, I did
She
just talk
says
about the
2
one side. Okay.
Thank you. Do you want to add your second side? And
And
So you need to amend your motion.
she's not
just
done.
going to continue,
Got a second?
and having the second
Hold
department.
on, hold on.
I'll
You're
call
right.
my second if you're gonna continue.
Thank you. Go ahead.
And making the second department be the building and code enforcement services, with the flow being city manager, assistant city manager, director, and the 3 divisions of building, administrative service, and code enforcement.
Second.
Thank you.
City manager, is that right?
Thank you, you guys, thank you.
So
I
have a
forgot
motion
about
on-
building.
Yeah, that's, all right, so we're going to, city clerk, you want to read it?
I just need to know it was building, code enforcement, and what was the last one?
Administrative services.
Okay.
I thought you were gonna make it in 2 separate motions for both sides. That's why I
I
seconded the
forgot
first
all
one.
about
And then
building.
Yeah. When she started with neighborhood development services into 2 departments.
Yes.
And you focused on one, I was, all right, so we have a motion on the floor. City Clerk, could you please read it back into the record for the benefit of everyone?
Direct the city manager to implement direction given previously for the city attorney to draft an ordinance dividing NDS into 2 departments. The chart of option A, future, with the flow to go to city manager, ACM, director, planning department, natural resources and historical services, removing social services and economic development services and placing under the city manager, and making the second department be building and code enforcement services with the flow city manager, ACM, director, and 3 divisions of building, code enforcement, and administrative services.
Sounded a whole lot better when you said it.
Okay, so I have the motion on the floor stated by Vice Mayor, and that was seconded by Commissioner Emmerich. Anything to that, Vice Mayor?
I believe the motion spoke to everything that we just talked about and felt was good, so I'm good with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Emmerich.
Nah, I'm good.
I gotta,
Anybody else want to speak to it? I don't know.
yeah,
if they're-
yeah.
Your name's not popping up. But go ahead, Commissioner Carrison.
Anyways, I just want to be clear as to what I'm voting on before I vote on it. It's where there'll be a director for natural resources and planning manager, correct? And then there'll be a director for building, code enforcement,
Correct. And administrative services.
and administrative services.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, okay. And then social services, economic development go under city manager. I just want to make sure that I'm very, all right. And then, of course, those being the director that oversees building, administrative services, code enforcement, go to an assistant city manager. And then those who are doing natural resources, planning manager, go to an assistant city manager, right? All right, I just wanted it cleared up because it's very confusing to follow. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to make sure that when this comes back with this ordinance, we are not funding this director position.
Correct.
Okay?
I'm planning on making another motion when we're done with this one.
Because I can go with this. Does this include then moving where planning is, or is planning staying where it's at? I want to see the whole picture instead of it being spoon-fed.
So this
I
does
wanna
not include
see-
anything other than creating a new department right now,
Okay.
and who they report to. As far as if somebody moves or if we decide to fund a director, y'all will be brought that information.
Thank you. Now I can vote.
Yeah, that's later on.
And if you're gonna fund the director or any of these other positions, they're gonna come back in a budget amendment, correct?
The funding of the director technically does not have to come back as a budget
Well,
amendment.
true, but the other two after
but
you do
nothing
the
will be done
ordinance.
without y'all
Okay, gotcha.
How would the director not have to come back as a budget amendment?
Because it's not, as long as it doesn't increase the size of the
Okay.
general fund's budget, if there were savings to be identified, I'm not saying it won't come back to you. I'm just letting you know that technically, by the ordinance itself, it doesn't have to.
But this, wait a second, part of the budget that we approved had a priority listing of things that were going to be done first.
You had a priority.
No,
listing.
it was part of the backup material when we approved the budget.
But it's
Not
not
part of the
part of the
ordinance.
budget ordinance. I'm telling you what's required versus what would be a good idea.
Mhm.
Well,
Y'all approved a
What we
budget that has
did
a
in
certain number of
budget.
positions in it.
yeah, what we did in budget was leave the director in, but it was unfunded.
Mhm.
I understand the concern that the mayor has because we have almost $500,000 deficit going into those parks that we're taking over. So we have to be prepared for all of those things because this budget was skin and bone. I mean, there was no meat to that whatsoever. So I think she's just a little concerned that maybe a director might be placed in here before some of those things that were skinned.
Well, and
But it
vice-
would, wouldn't it still have to come before us for that budget adjustment?
If it doesn't increase the budget, technically, no, it does not have to.
The budget of that department
The budget of the general fund as a whole.
as a whole?
Well, then I'll pass the gavel because my concern is we have other departments that have cut to the bare bones and have needs and responsibilities of their department. And those are in this priority list that were discussed. And we have other things that are far, I don't want to say far more important, but they already cut. And now it's like, we're going to move a director to the top of the list because we can.
No.
What-
That
what
was
was
not,
that?
not even close to what I said.
No.
Not even close.
No.
What I said was I answered the question you asked, is does this have to come back to you all? And the answer is no. And I also said it wouldn't be a good idea to not bring it back to you all and that's because of all the list of priorities. But if you want to know what's required versus what is a good idea, they're different answers.
Okay, so we'll go ahead with this vote and then I will put a motion out on the floor.
I want to know what those priorities are that would, oh, you know,
I'll give it a copy of it to city clerk. All I did was pass you what was in that
Parks.
majority. No, there was a whole bunch of other stuff on there, Commissioner. There's like $800,000 worth of
but
stuff.
Public Works is under a different,
I-
it's not general
I-
fund.
Understand.
I mean, there's very little that has to do with general fund, and if you think that security badge readers are more important than an environmental or natural resource, I mean, really, no, I'm okay.
Keep in mind, this position was not on that priority list because it was left in the budget.
Thank you.
Right.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. I don't see anybody else's lights on. We'll go ahead and take a motion and, I'm sorry, a vote. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Why is it, oh, there it is. Guess I didn't show it who was boss and hitting it. And that passed 5-0. All right, Vice Mayor, you said you had a second motion you wanted to make?
I would like to direct staff to do an inquiry into what the cost that would be involved for a natural resource manager.
Isn't that gonna automatically be done? Oh, maybe not.
We didn't.
There's not, if you'd like that information and want to direct it.
Yeah, because back at budget time, I thought that archaeologist could have been renamed and a different direction put to that, and they become the natural resource manager. To me, that natural resource manager is probably even a little more important than the archaeologist at this point, because actually that person could be able to do a lot of that archaeological type of stuff. So I would like the information, including the financial aspect, to the natural resource manager.
So you're looking for the financial impacts of a natural resource manager, correct?
That way it
I
can
will
be,
second that.
that way it can be put in place.
I'll second that.
Right now it doesn't exist.
I
But if
got
they
you.
bring back the information, then we can have a placehold for that position.
So I have a motion on the floor to have city manager come back via memo, agenda item. When you say come back,
No, it's
elaborate.
gotta be,
I would recommend that we send you that information, and if y'all want to discuss it, one of you can just ask to put it on the
Put it
agenda.
on the agenda. I agree.
Okay,
Thank
as
you.
the seconder, Commissioner Emmerich, is the memo,
Commissioner Emmerich, it was me.
oh, I'm sorry, I thought he did. I apologize.
I'm
Commissioner
used to
Karas,
it,
Commissioner Carrison, is it okay if it comes back as a memo?
of course.
Thank you. So I have a motion on the floor to have city manager create a memo outlining the cost of a natural resource manager as stated by Vice Mayor's motion, seconded by Commissioner Carrison. Anything, Vice Mayor?
I believe I said it all. Thank
Commissioner
you.
Carrison?
Nope.
We'll go ahead and take the vote. Seeing no other comments? And that passed 5-0. Vice Mayor, did you have any other motions you wanted to make?
I don't. I will state that I did not give an emergency timeline to the city manager to bring forward that ordinance. So, and I did that on purpose because I don't see it as being an emergency and something that she has to bring, next Tuesday or whatever. So, thank you.
I think city attorney has way other pressing items on her plate at this point.
I would
So-
like to see a revised chart so that we can see what it is that this motion puts in place if we could. I mean, that can be just sent by memo or email or whatever.
Maybe it be included with the ordinance.
So the fun
Well, I
part,
doubt I'll be here for the ordinance. I just want to see it,
well, that's kind of the fun part to this is,
Yeah.
so there's 5 of you up here who just voted 5-0
Oh,
to
good point.
establish this. We don't bring this back on the 27th and November 10th,
All that time.
then this could be a waste of effort because we'll have a whole new commission who, I don't know that they'll vote which way or another.
Rain on my parade.
We'll have, so it's either bring it back on those
I
2
gotcha.
dates or bring
Yeah.
it back for a conversation to see whether or not it's worth doing again.
So, I mean, we've already
Oh, wow.
started this process essentially, right, city attorney?
Yes, we did begin and have conducted substantial work on a draft ordinance from the original direction between the June and
right.
July timeframes. It'd take a few hours to finalize that. Now, the Legistar deadline for the October 27th meeting passed on October 13th. We were presented a contract on Thursday night that we are trying to work for that meeting as well. That is a high priority and very time consuming. It was not in very good shape, so we've been working on a rewrite. So if you make this our priority to do that, it would take a few hours to do so, but it will push other items off, including departmental review. So you tell me and we'll do it, but I want to make sure that it's your direction. Because I have about,
So
I have
the-
about 12 other directives from you
Gotcha.
that predate this one.
The only other meeting we have after this one is the 27th?
No.
But then the 10th.
November 5th as
5th
well.
and November 10th.
But we have to get this on a day and night meeting too.
Which the
5th.
27th and the 10th would be. All right. I'm all right for changing the
27th and the
priority.
10th?
The daytime meeting, and the 10th is a daytime meeting. So to meet the nighttime requirement, that would
Would
be
have to be 27th
next Tuesday.
and 5th. Okay, so I will move to have city attorney prioritize this for the next meeting being October 27th.
Second.
Motion on the floor, I'm sorry, I was ready. I got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Carrison to prioritize this ordinance for October 27th. And that was seconded by Vice Mayor. Anything to that, Commissioner?
No, I'm glad it was brought up because I really didn't think about that part.
Me either.
I was really kind of hoping maybe that I wasn't here, but apparently
And anything, Vice Mayor?
sucking me in.
I'm just glad it was brought up too, because I didn't think about it that direction.
And that passed 4-1 with myself dissenting. And the reason I dissented is this ordinance is not this kind of a priority. This reorg and departmental change is not this kind of priority. I know it's a priority because all of us understand it. So what? You have to spend 15 minutes or 20 minutes explaining it to new commission. Something's not setting right with me on it.
Proxy.
And that's all there is to it. It's just not setting right.
Oh,
No,
no, it's still gonna go through. Don't worry about what she says.
is it? It has to be done unanimously, ma'am.
And we have to get feedback.
And that
from Facebook.
passed 4-1. It's not
Yeah,
done by
and
proxy.
friends.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Show.
Excuse me. Commissioner, I'm sitting here. I made my vote.
Keep sitting there.
I was all fine and dandy with everything until it got rushed.
I got you.
It's not rushed. She said it would take 2 hours. That's not rushed.
Time to go.
They've already done half the work, majority of the work, actually. They've been working on this
I
for
checked with her
months.
before
Okay,
tonight,
the vote
too.
was
Huh?
cast. Discussion is over. Is there
Yeah.
public comment
Yes.
now?
Is the vote cast?
I
Did
did.
we
I
already?
said 4-1.
Thank you.
McDowell dissenting, and I stated the reason. Public comment time. Mr. Hale.
Commissioners, don't worry about this being voted in. Whoever does it, and it'll go back to you all, you will be remembered. This may turn out to be one of the most outstanding things that you will be remembered for. Because when you see what's coming, you'll see the value of a DNR. I just wanted to answer some questions that you all brought up. And when I first started looking into a DNR, John Ryan, who is the Air Water Division of Environmental Protection of Sarasota County, he told me that originally when their DNR was formed, it was autonomous and freestanding. Later on, about the years 2008 to 2010, the politics changed so much he didn't say what they were. But then the DNR was, so to speak, broken up and put under planning and development. So that's how that occurred. Their departments also consider this. Parks are also would be put under the, if you choose, put under the new option A future. This is the one I chose all along. It's like some quiz show where you all got the right door. I don't know. You're just a phenomenon to watch how you operate. It's just amazing. And what's the other thing? Where is it? Oh, Commissioner Curzon. I'm part of the archaeological group too, as you probably are. So I hope they don't jump down my throat for this. I feel that the next big expense will be a sustainability person. Why? Because they make you money. We had, I believe, the Sarasota County sustainability person actually spoke to you guys. No? Well, they sure spoke to us at the EAB, and we were knocked out. They not only go after grants, they make money for you. They show you how to operate your government more. They're a general research person you pay to go and find out things, what other cities are doing. So that's a value to that.
Mm-hmm.
And, I owe you a trash pickup on the Mayacahatchee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hale. Ms. Burney.
I
have a public records request. My name's Connie Bruni. I guess it could be anonymous, but today I'll be Connie Bruni. Mr. Hanks, 10:33 and 10:37 a.m., writing with pencil. 10:53, typing on his telephone, also at 11:01.
Hang on, Ms. Bruni, stop for a moment.
Yeah, I'm done.
Stop for just a second.
Yes, ma'am.
Folks, we have public comment speaking. Could you
Not
kind of
public
keep?
comment, it's a public
May
records
I have my
request
time
that
back,
she can
please?
go ahead and turn into the
Okay,
clerks.
so if you could just
I'm over it.
muffle your papers around quietly
Sure.
so that we can hear what she's saying. This is her time.
Hmm.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I said 10:53 to 11:02 on his phone, 11:02 and 11:01, writing with pencil, 11:09, typing on phone, 11:11 to 11:13, scrolling with thumb, 11:40, reading separate computer screen. Vanessa Carasone left dais at 10:30 a.m. and returned with a large stack of papers. She shuffled on the dais.
You have any clue what a public record is? Because that's not a public record.
This is her public comment time. If she wanted to
No,
read
she's
the
making a
newspaper, she
public
could.
records request.
And it's her public
We have a process
comment
for that.
time. She could read the newspaper, she could read
Correct.
the yellow pages. This is her public comment time.
I'm just so over the ignorance.
Okay, but it's still
Just
public
so over the
comment.
ignorance. Okay.
She can speak about whatever she wants. She could sing a lullaby for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Proceed.
Yes, and I believe that I could stand here and read the Holy Bible if I chose to do so,
Please do.
which I will.
That'd be
10:34, looking through papers, this is regarding Ms. Carasone. 10:48, writing. 11:12, shuffling papers. 11:25, reading or looking at phone. 11:36 a.m., papers banged on the dais. I'm sorry, I didn't have a better word for that. That's not the right word, but I didn't have the right word. 12:11, writing while Mr. Hale was speaking. Mr. Emmerich, 11:25, reading and touching the computer to the left of his regular screen. 11:27 to 11:29, touching the screen. And then separately, I'm asking for two things. The organizational charts that were handed out by Mr. Lear, the public did not have access to that prior to today's meeting. And the email from the finance director and property manager that was sent on a Saturday that Mr. Lear mentioned. Those are my requests. I'm sure I'll get a nice big.
Thank you, Ms. Rooney. Is there any virtual public comment for the final public comment section of this meeting?
No.
Commission comments, Commissioner Hanks.
No, other than a Baker's Act, be all right, but other than that, I'm good.
Vice Mayor.
Yes. I noticed, and this is concerning Parks and Rec, and a commission comment that I had made just the other night in regards to the yard sale and including crafts before the holiday. After that, there was a Facebook post where there was a maker's market that was going to be coming up in November. And Ms. Sandy can probably state where that was going to be held and stuff, but by me being curious, was that supposed to be the yard sale? And so I got into some discussion with Ms. Sandy, and there are 3 people who have a market maker license. Now, they've not been able to hold any maker markets. We put a $100 fee to these people to come in. And that is why I wanted to discuss this, because the state took away us being able to charge for food trucks. So they don't even have a license. So I think it's relatively unfair that we charge the market makers $100 when we don't even charge the food trucks. So the dilemma came, if we're going to have a yard sale, it's like $15, $20, something like that to go into that. These people have on hold this $100 and back and forth, back and forth. Do you do it? Do you don't? this would probably have to be an agenda item, but personally, I would like to undo that $100 charge for the market maker. And while, that agenda item is being brought back, that they then would know that that money was going to be reimbursed to those 3 people, but they could join in the yard sale for the $20 or whatever, because they're going to be getting their 100 back. And I see you pushing a button.
Yes, ma'am, I'm not sure about participating in the yard sale, but I do want to make clear that you cannot waive the $100 fee today if it's in our code. That would have to be by ordinance only.
Correct. That's why I said that would have to come back as an
Right.
agenda item to remove the charge. So that I know would have to come up. But I'm not talking about waiving their charge for the yard sale. I'm talking about charging them the $20. But because we know this agenda item will be coming back, they potentially would get their 100 returned to them. That's about the only way that I could think to do that properly. Miss Sandy, do you have any comment?
Sure. Sandy Funheller, Parks and Recreation Director. So to answer your first question about the Makers Market, there was potentially one planned for the 21st. It was not confirmed. That was posted in error for a Makers Market. That is the date that we're looking at for the combined yard sale craft event that you had talked about at the last meeting.
Okay.
So the cleanest way would be, anybody that's a maker's market that holds a permit can participate in the yard sale. They would just pay the fee for the yard sale. And then if you want to repeal that ordinance, refund them their money, that would be a whole separate
Correct. Okay.
function.
That's new information. I did not know that that went out in error, that it was supposed to be the yard sale. So that was November 21st, I believe it was.
Correct.
Okay.
We have not put anything out about the new event that you talked about. We're working on that right now.
Okay, but it could potentially be
Mhm.
that solves it for me. Thank you.
Did you want to get a consensus to bring anything back?
I'll just put it on an agenda. I'll just go ahead and submit it as an agenda
Just
item.
wanted to double check to make sure you didn't need any consensus.
My second thing is, there was a public commenter who said that they wanted to make a comment on the mediation workshop, whatever, special meeting, whatever that was, but there wasn't a number on the agenda. What kind of
It wasn't
problem?
an agenda because it wasn't a city meeting. It wasn't a commission meeting or an advisory board meeting, so it was not an actual agenda. It was
Okay, so what should
informational.
that commenter have put in where it said agenda item? Just NA?
I don't know I don't think it was a required field. I don't know if it's a required field. I'd have to look into it, but I can look into it and let you know.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you. All right, that's all.
Commissioner Harrison, did you have any comments? Commissioner Arnott?
Yeah, I just wanted to state for the record that due to the public records request that was asked, we all have computers up here, and I just want the public to know, since apparently they don't have a clue, that our computers also has all the backup material.
Right.
And that's what we use our computers for, is to go through and look at backup material. So since I have no clue, I don't want any falsities out there, because that's all we're doing. But the other thing that I noticed about this is that only 3 commissioners were pointed out. The mayor and the vice mayor both have their computers in front. The mayor, she takes notes all the time, which, God bless her. It's her job. That's what she does. But yet that wasn't picked upon. Just the other 3 commissioners. So I guess that's just favoritism and the buddy system. So I'll leave it at that.
Or the by proxy at work.
And city.
And what was that? What was that, ma'am?
City attorney, city attorney on public comment. I just want to make sure, because I know I'm going to be leaving the chair, but I just want to make sure that when public comment is being heard, that's the public's time to speak. And I just want to make sure that I was within my rights to stop her time, to let her and correct the actions up here and then restart her time. How else should I do that when public comment is going on? Just in case these next 3 meetings or so, we have other situations.
The chair always has the right to maintain decorum in the meeting.
That's addressed in the handbook that we
Just wanted
have
to make sure.
also.
Just wanted to make sure.
It was-
City attorney?
Attorney, if there's a process that's specific to public comment or public record requests, specific, then is it not that they should be directed to specifically follow that versus making a public comment as a public request?
In the state of Florida, we cannot mandate how someone makes a public records request. And some other states, you can mandate it that it be done by form or that it be sent to a particular department, such as the city clerk. In the state of Florida, we can take verbal public records requests, and that's just part of what the law allows. It's very broad with respect to transparency and access. We're known to be one of the broadest states in the country.
Thank you, because that was a question the last time that the same public commenter came up and asked the same crazy requests. Thank you.
City manager, I think, is the one I need to direct this to, and Vice Mayor, I appreciate you prompting it. Since food trucks have been changed and moved to state statutes, do we have to redo our ordinance to remove some of the requirements that our ordinance has, just to keep things nice and clean?
We are redoing our fee ordinance.
Yeah,
But
the food truck one?
we're doing the whole fee ordinance because y'all directed it to come back. And we're trying to get it to you on the 27th. It's in review right now by me.
Mayor, the food truck ordinance is in process of being
I'm
revised.
sorry, my mic was off. I must have hit it when I moved my papers. My question had to do with food trucks. Do we need to bring back the ordinance so that it matches state statute? I know the fee schedule is coming back.
Mayor, it's in process.
It is.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that update. Administrative report, city attorney.
I have nothing.
City manager.
I just wanted to address the thing that y'all talked about. I know the mayor voted against this being rushed. It was not my intent for it to be rushed. I just want you to know that there's the reason why I mentioned it to you is so that staff doesn't work on something in all of today's efforts, knowing that we have a change in commission, so that you all would have the opportunity to approve what you gave direction on. It is not meant to be a rush in any means. There's no ulterior motive to why I stated that, other than the fact of I'm trying to make sure that staff doesn't spend an exorbitant amount of time working on something only to have to bring it back again to find out. Because as you know, this is one of those rare occasions where it does require a unanimous approval. And if that's why I asked when you all said 5-0 to go ahead with this. If it had been 3-2, I'd have told you you're wasting our time to even moving forward with this. If one of you is one of the rare occasions where one person controls all the power, and it's any one of you. If you all vote no, we're dead in the water, and we've wasted a tremendous amount of time.
And the motion was to have this done by the next meeting, and I voted against it only because I know how busy the city attorney is, and I firmly believe that they could have waited and just spent 15, 20 minutes. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be voting against everything that we did today. The motion itself was
Yes.
to rush it.
No, my point was
So-
I wanted you to know why I pointed that out to
I
you
know.
all, not so that it would be any other reason, because as we all know, sometimes the communication isn't clear of what I said is not what somebody else hears. So I want to make sure that I clarified that somebody doesn't run with city managers doing this, and that was not. So appreciate that.
Hang on one second.
That's all I have.
That's all you have. Thank you. City clerk.
I do not have anything,
Thank you. Now, Vice Mayor, go ahead. We're done with administrative
My light
reports.
on, by the way.
Now, this is just to add to that conversation right there. I spoke with the city attorney before this in regards to bringing forward that ordinance. And she told me it would only take a couple of hours to finish it, but she would have to be directed by the commission in order to make it a priority. She couldn't just choose on her own to do it. So it needed to be done the way it was. There's no alternative motive to it. It's just needed to be done clean in the way that it should be. So, and I appreciate it being brought up because I forgot all about it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Carrison?
Thank you, Vice Mayor, because when I'm told that a motion was made to rush it, that's not true at all, since the city attorney herself said that it would take only a couple of hours. It was adamantly and repetitively mentioned that this has been worked on for months. So just want to make sure that the public listening understands that this was not rushed, nor would a new ordinance be rushed. Thank you.
And we changed what the city attorney was working on because it's my understanding the city attorney was working on what was originally presented as option A. And now we changed option A future and divided it up. So that's why I was under the impression that it was being rushed and that her time that she had spent so far was on something completely different than what we directed.
Which is
So-
why I asked her again
Anything else?
afterwards, and she said again, only a couple hours.
Is there anything else, guys? Seeing nothing else, it is now 12:27. We are officially adjourned. Have a great day.
Yes, you are.